I don't want the client to see like that particular software as the value add. I want them to see me and my advisors as the value add. So if you could have it all together in one spot and something that was branded with all your information, and you are seen as the one that's pointed together, you are the sorcerer there that's got it all and brought together and showcased to them. That is ideal.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Next Mile. I'm your host, Kyle Van Pelt, co-founder at Milemarker. And today I am joined by Steve Reeder. Steve is a partner and the head of wealth management at RWA, and he is constantly chasing after his hyperactive 4 and 6-year-old kids. Steve, thanks so much for joining the show, man.
True. Thank you. Thanks for having me. And if they run through the background here, I'll apologize in advance, but thanks for having me. Excited to be here today.
No apology necessary. We'll celebrate that if they run through the background in advance. I think that's amazing, man. And yeah, happy to have you. It should be a fun conversation.
Looking forward to it.
All right, Steve. So I ask every guest the same first question to kick us off, and you're not going to be any different. So hundreds of these conversations on air and off the air, I've found everybody's path to this industry is unique and it's their own path. Some may be traditional in nature. Maybe they followed family footsteps to get here. Other people didn't even know this was an industry, and they come in the side door of the industry later in their career after doing something completely different. But what I've found is whether your path is traditional or untraditional, everybody has what we call a money moment. And that's a moment in your life where the light bulb went off and you found, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. So Steve, what was that money moment that led you to be standing where you are right now, having this conversation with me?
Yeah, great question. Thanks for asking there. So it's funny, I tell a lot of the advisors I work with, especially the younger ones, that I have no idea how I got here today. Like the path that I took, I really truly was just walking through doors as they opened in front of me. And there was not a lot of intent to it. So if you're a younger advisor, if you're in college and you don't know what you want to do, you're in good company. However, I did have a moment or an event that definitely changed the trajectory of my life and got me basically to where I am today. Which is when I was about 16 years old, I actually had a great aunt pass away, and she left me $5,000. And little did I know how big of an investment that would be for me. And what happened is I decided at that point I wanted to invest it. My dad, set me up with his advisor. The guy was willing to spend a lot of time with me. And when I mean a lot, I mean a lot. And I look back at this moment and think about, as an advisor today and as a senior person in the industry, would I spend the amount of time with this 16-year-old for $5,000 that he did? And I think a lot of people in the industry, the answer would be no, but this guy dedicated a lot of time and energy. And so I invested that money at 16 and started getting into it. I started watching CNBC and really paying attention. I had an Apple IIc computer and would plug my floppy disk in, and no joke, every day I'd plug in the new quote and to see what I had that given day. And I started just tracking it and following it, and I fell in love with it. And I really, truly, look back to that moment and that happening, and I'd be in a different place than I am today if that never did occur. But it taught me a lot too. And it taught me, the biggest lesson I take from that is, I think, and I tell my advisors all the time, taking care of someone's kids is the best relationship builder you can do. And that is exactly what that guy did to me.
Wow. That is impactful. I'm thinking about Jim Bowen from First Trust always says that being a financial advisor is a noble profession. And I think there's a lot of people out there who might not agree with that because some of the connotation can be whatever. But when you hear stories like your money moment story, it just shows you how noble of a profession this can be, because somebody being gracious with their time and investing in you, one of the more noble things that they could do, led to you being where you're at right now. And I think that is an incredibly powerful story.
Yeah, I like to frame it up as, we are in a relationship business. We just happen to offer financial advice. And I really do think it is that focused on why someone is successful is on the relationship side. And again, I can always anchor back to that moment in my life and what happened to me directly, and that relationship that he built. And if you can build a relationship like that, you're in. I mean, you have a lot of leeway to screw things up. You can be wrong about the market. You can have someone go through a tough market cycle. You can miss a signature. You can do a lot of different things. If you have that relationship, it builds up a lot of relationship capital, and it allows you to really dig deep in those relationships as well.
Yeah, that's great, man. I love that. So actually, that's a decent segue into the next thing I wanted to ask you about. So in some of the research preparing for this, we have seen that you've referred to RWA before as a boutique firm of consequence. I love that. I think that's a great frame. I don't want to read too much into that, though. So what do you mean by being a boutique firm of consequence?
Yeah, a boutique firm we think of at the end of the day as very white glove. It's very personalized. We're going to treat each relationship personally. It's not going to be a widget. We want to make sure that we are truly serving you and your family and what's important to you. And so the boutique side is just that, the white glove service. And when we say of consequence, we're large enough, we have the resources to really deliver on everything that our clients are going to need. And so we have a deep investment team that's been working together for a long time to get our investment management strategies. So we really have what I believe is the important services that our clients are going to need. And it's of consequence. We can really serve them at every level.
That's excellent. Okay, so being a boutique firm of consequence, and then I'm thinking about your money moment, I'm thinking about being in the relationship business. Are you guys extending that boutique white glove experience to clients' kids and the, kind of continuing with the nature of your money moment?
Yeah, absolutely. We're definitely looking at generational planning. When I think about what we offer and how you get to that consequence piece, I often refer to it as our 4 pillars. When I talk to advisors, I want them to deliver on the 4 pillars. And so if I can talk just for a quick second about what I mean by that, how those tie together, I think everything starts with financial planning. It's the first pillar, and I think everything has to start there. Investment management, investment strategy, asset allocation is the second one. But I still don't understand how an advisor out there could develop an investment strategy without starting with a financial plan. How do you know what is right for them if you haven't understood their needs and their goals? So it's got to start with planning, investment management, and then tax planning. In tax planning, when you think about your largest expense, people are paying taxes more than they're paying anything else. You can make a significant impact in their life by good tax planning. And I think it's interesting when people think about taxes, they'll ask if you charge for it, and they associate it to the tax prep. The tax prep, to me, it's very important. Obviously, you want to get it right, but that isn't the big value add. The integrated tax planning is where you get the value add. And then to tie into your question, the 4th pillar is estate planning. So when we think about estate planning, a lot of the clients that come to us are looking at something bigger. A lot of them have enough money that they probably don't have to worry about finances, probably as much as they do. Some of them still worry, but they're looking at generationally. How do I leave a legacy? How do I help others? And that is so key to what they're doing. And if you don't hit on all 4 of those, it's really hard to execute on leaving that lasting legacy. And so we integrate that into our entire client experience. All of our clients that come through have an opportunity to be part of the 4-pillar program there and to touch on all of those. And then we also love to get the kids invited into meetings. So if we can do a family planning meeting and integrate them in, I think it is such a great conversation. And it's often easier for a third party like an advisor to talk to someone's children about some of these topics than it often is coming from their own parent.
That's so good. There's a couple of things I want to unpack on some of that, but I'm actually going to start with one of the last things you said, which was the family meeting. I think this is an incredibly powerful concept that advisors have, but I'm going to ask just maybe devil's advocate, maybe a little tongue in cheek, right? When I was, in my 20s or things like that, I probably would not have want to pay that much attention to what my parents' advisor is going to talk about. So how do you run an engaging family meeting for the kids of your clients to try and make sure that they understand the value you provide, to make sure that they understand what's coming and how they can be best prepared for this?
Yeah, it oftentimes starts with values. And so I think the hesitation for clients to get into these conversations is I don't want my kids to know what I have. I don't want them to know what's coming. And so I think if you can start at that higher level and start with the storytelling a little bit of this is how we got to where we are. I have found that kids often do get a little bit engaged in the family history of it and understanding their story. I found that these conversations are not happening at home. I even have found that a lot of times the spouses will say, I never knew that. I never heard that before. If you can get into that, and if you can keep it more on that level where we are trying to get in and understanding the values, what's important, where are we going, how did we get there? Like, I think understanding that piece and integrating that into the conversation is a great way to get them engaged. I think if you're starting with dollars and cents, oftentimes it doesn't become as impactful or, dare I say, emotional as a conversation. And I think if you can get the emotion into it a little bit and really the why it's so important to them, that's where you really get them integrated, get them engaged. And I think they get on the hook for more conversations.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. I think that's great. That's a very approachable way to talk to the next gen. And I think it's amazing how stories are the thing that connect us. Okay, I want to also talk a little bit about, in your 4 pillars, you guys have estate planning, you have tax planning, you have investment management, you have all of these things. I want to talk to you about the decision to do that, because it seems like a lot of firms today are trying to have a broader set of services, but they're doing that through partnerships with a firm like wealth.com or Vanilla or something like that. And that's how they would tackle the estate planning or things along those lines. But you brought it in-house. So talk to me about the decision of, hey, we're really going to bring this in-house and we're going to make this a part of our offering from the core and the foundation of it.
Yeah, absolutely. So to start off and say, we do both, right? So we partner with outside as well as have it in-house. I think there, as a business side of it, there's pros and cons to both of them. Why we chose to bring it in-house and how we integrate it is, I look at the taxes. We're just coming out of tax season. When we work with CPAs, we often have a good relationship with them. But when we think about outside of tax time, they aren't quite as integrated into our process as when they're in-house. And so if I have literally someone in the same building as my advisor and we have a client need, or we're trying to figure something out in August, September, November, whenever, like, to have that direct connect to that individual really helps on the planning side. And as I mentioned, I think that is where all the value is really delivered, is the tax planning, the estate planning. So whether we have someone prep the taxes or what they might be, I have always put a major focus on how do we really lean into that planning, drive value through planning. And I think that's where we can change people's lives. And not that, again, outsourced advisors can't do that as well. But if we have a team that's literally working together in the same building, connected together on the same calls, really integrated, that integration really allows us to provide planning in a lot bigger, better way. And I also think it helps teach and train the advisors on a deeper level when they are hearing it repeated on our team calls and our company calls, in our meetings, and they start to really develop that cadence and they learn from each other as well. I think that has helped really broaden the breadth of what we're offering to our clients. And that is why we've chosen to do it in-house, is that team approach really helps us provide the best planning that we can.
That's awesome. I like that, because I think that is the core of a lot of independent firms and things like that, is planning really is at the center, and they're trying to use that as the hub, and they're spoking off of the plan, which is powerful. All right. So Steve, a little over a year ago, you guys went through a merger, and shortly after that, you guys rebranded. So I want to talk a little bit about this, and we can double click on this, but we see people getting acquired or getting rolled up all of the time. It's actually not that often that you see a true merger. I think sometimes people position it as a merger, but it was really an acquisition. This was a true merger. And then you guys rebranded, but both firms already had really strong brands. So just walk me through, like, why a merger, why a rebrand? Like, tell that story a little bit that gets us to where we are today.
Yeah. And I think when you bring together mature brands, mature companies that offer something a little different as well, the merger makes a lot more sense. And so I think when you think about typical acquisitions or mergers as companies coming together, they're either very similar in what they offer or they're very complementary. And so I think in the latest merger here, we had 2 complementary firms really coming together. And what we wanted to do was pay homage and respect to the brands that were before us and the companies that were before us. And they did add something a little different. And so being able to come together and say, we both have something to bring to the table, and together we're going to be so much stronger, I think that sends a great message. I do think when you think about a firm coming together, if someone changes their name, I'm not saying it's even the case, but mentally it's like you have a winner and a loser. Well, we're this company, we're that company. So bringing people together, rebranding, going forward is kind of a new beginning. It still allows you to pay homage. And in our brand, we try to show that and deliver that. Talk about the firms that we've brought together to make this new brand. It also can be a new beginning with how you're telling your story. So there are definitely very good things about these companies that people connect to, but it may not be exactly the direction you want to go as a firm going forward. And so when you create a new brand, you get to tell a new story. You get to show up differently. Yeah, you can lose a little bit of what made the individual companies great, but I think it really allows you to move forward and step forward as one company and one delivery, one offering, and this is who we are. And you don't have to worry about one side of the firm that didn't necessarily do it the other way, feeling left out or feeling not part of it. We're RWA, and this is how we show up, and this is who we are, and it's part of our whole company. So I think it really helps the team come together when we have this one project that we're all moving forward on, and it's not one person or the other that we've taken over.
That's a great answer. So let's talk about RWA of the future. So tell me a little bit about the model. Are you recruiting advisors in and kind of bolting them onto a network or a platform? Is everybody kind of under one brand? Like, talk to me about how the business is structured right now. And then I'm curious, like, was this merger an opportunity now to start, kind of scaling through acquisitions rather than mergers or recruiting or things like that?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we are an RIA today. And so as you mentioned, the company's coming together. And then my team is the wealth management of the private wealth space is $10 billion. So that's the makeup as a whole of the company. There are two somewhat differentiated divisions. And then when we think about bringing in firms or even just advisors, like we look for the natural best fit. Is the practice on the family office side where they may have the more complex needs, or is it more down the road wealth management, private wealth that would be in my group? And so we have the avenue for both. And so depending on that, we may onboard them a little bit different, just being into potentially different setting there. But when we think about how we're bringing people in, we are actively recruiting. We're always recruiting good talent. We want to make sure we have the right people. We want to make sure we're always up in our game, but we're always looking for good people recruiting wise. And then acquisition wise, same deal. Our number one thing we're going to look for is culture. When we meet with the group who's potentially looking to be acquired, they have to pass the culture test first. I think a lot of people, there's a lot of great advisors, a lot of firms, a lot of money in motion right now for sure. But if you don't get the right group in there, it can really disrupt things. So we don't want to disrupt who we have. And we want a group that's going to integrate pretty seamlessly. And so then I look at how do they see what they do every day. And it's interesting. There are still a lot of advisors that maybe are more investment focused, which is the history of where the advisor investment players are legacy firms. Some of our legacy firms came from. Very investment focused. I am one to push everyone in the financial planning direction. I think there's a big opportunity for help us take some of the firms that maybe don't have the four pillars built out, the platform, the process, the client offering built out, that we can add a ton of value. We can plug them right into our service offering and what we're doing, expand what we're doing. We have some technologies that we work with that we can plug them into. And I think it can really elevate their game pretty quickly. And so there's other firms that are already doing something very similar to what we're doing, which make a very natural fit partner, and we can plug them into their team. I think also when we look across the country, we have 7 offices today. We want to get into markets that we also think are interesting and growing markets. And so they may be able to add some value to us as well by expanding our footprint in a strategic way.
As you were talking through that and you're talking about firms that fit the culture, things like that, I don't know why, but this is where my mind went to. It went back to your 4 pillars, but being so planning centric and focused. Talk to me about the model. Are you guys doing this model where people might come in and they pay for an initial plan and then does that funnel itself into an AUM basis? Is it all an AUM relationship from the beginning? Help me understand how that whole process works. I'm always fascinated by people that are so focused on the planning side of things.
Yeah, we are only AUM based. So we are fee based. We are AUM model. So as we bring in a new relationship, if we have a prospect that we're working with, we lead with a preliminary financial plan. So everyone that comes in the door is going to get that plan. As I mentioned earlier, I don't know how you give good advice without understanding those basics. You can fill out a good discovery sheet and understand it all, but as you piece it together in a plan, I even look at the Monte Carlo. And the way I kind of think about that, I know some people think it's washed up, it doesn't work, whatever. But if you truly have all the inputs, being their net worth, their investments, all the inputs and all the inputs for goals, so you know what's important and you know what they're trying to accomplish, their spend might be, and you plug it in there. One, it's wrong immediately. Like it's never perfect. It always changes. It changes every day. But directionally, it's the closest thing we have to telling, is someone or is someone not okay? And so that's why I love starting with that. And so that is important to keep that refreshed. I mean, the craziness of the market over the last few weeks, like just show like that could change someone drastically. But what we typically see is as long as you're tweaking it over time, even the craziness that we've seen in the last few weeks has very little impact directionally on someone's plan. So like being able to anchor back to that and say, am I okay? Yes or no? Putting in all our inputs, refreshing our inputs, looking at the number. It's still the best number that I know of out there that we can help tell a client, are you okay or not?
That's a great answer. I love that. It makes me think about a conversation I had with a mentor one time where they were talking about there is unfathomable value in planning, but the value of the plan, goes away so quickly. And he was telling me this story about they did all of this great planning work with a client. They put together the plan, all of that stuff. And the plan was like, you got to wait 2 or 3 years to buy this boat. And he said the day after the meeting, the client went and bought the boat, right? And it's like, but it's like there was so much value in the planning. But at the end of the day, what they tied that back to is what you just said, which the client said, I'll be okay whether I buy the boat tomorrow or not. And like, ultimately, that's what I care about. And yes, I might mess up my plan, but doing the planning exercise, looking at everything together, provided so much value in this client understanding where they were going to be, assuming how things went. So it's funny because clients can behaviorally mess up the plan, but the value of planning itself is immense.
Absolutely. And a couple of things came to mind there, if you don't mind. I think the plan itself, one mistake people make is they position the plan as like the value add or the plan as like, this is the end product. And I think when you charge for the plan, you kind of send that message too, like this is the value. And I think of that with tax planning is the same. So tax prep, you're paying for tax prep. That's the value add, that's the win. It's not true. It's what you're saying. It's the planning process, creating a plan, talking through it, understanding what's important, helping them get to the goals that they have. Like that is the value add. And I think with technologies as they come out and come and go, and the plan, being this particular one, that is not the value add. You as the advisor are the value add. The advice you give is the value add. These are all tools that we're using to help give you the best advice. But this is an ongoing, living, breathing thing that we're going to keep working with that's going to change every single time I revisit it.
That's so good. And I really empathize with that as I think about my own life, because I'm very fortunate to know hundreds, thousands of advisors probably in some regard. I've spent my career here and I know enough to be dangerous. And yet there's so many times in my own life where I still need the value of an advisor, right? And I might be able to have a different type of conversation with them because I can speak the language or whatever. But when it's your own situation, your own circumstance, there's so much value in working with somebody who's using tools, who sees, from a different angle and can provide great counsel to you, no matter what. And so, if people in this industry are still looking for, the value of advice from advisors, I think people outside of it should almost certainly be working with an advisor.
Absolutely. I know, you may have some questions later about this. I know you love to talk about the technology side. And I think technology is going to be a great support for the human advisor. But it's my opinion that at the end of the day, people are always going to want that human advisor, at least for the foreseeable future in my lifetime. Who knows what changes. But I think you're going to always want that human advisor. Money is very emotional. People don't always realize that. But I mean, anytime you've ever had anyone cry in a planning meeting, talking about the family, what's important, maybe they have a diagnosis or whatever, but the financial side of it is very emotional. And this may not be a fair analogy, some people could say, but I always kind of tie it to like nobody wants an email telling them they're dying of cancer. Right. And I think with financial planning, it's going to be the same. They're paying for the comfort of having a human involved. You may have to shape the message. They may need an accountability partner to get them to actually do anything. An email in their inbox saying you're spending too much is not going to change someone's habits. And I've had to have some very tough conversations with people about they need to change the direction of their life. I've had people feel really guilty about having money, spending money, things that the computer is not going to be able to connect with them on. So I think in our industry, a lot of talk about tech, a lot of talk about AI, but it is my firm belief that the human advisor is always going to play a piece of that. But it's the advisors that can integrate that technology into their service offering that are going to ultimately win.
I couldn't agree more. I think that's really well framed. That's really well framed, because I think in some ways, technology, AI, things like that are just tools, right? And I might be able to swing a hammer or I might be able to run a saw, but that doesn't mean that I'm going to be as skilled at using those tools as a craftsman or a contractor to build something, right? And I think that I keep coming back to this, and I'm sure AI is going to get smarter, all of that stuff, but you would know better prompts, better questions, better ways to leverage AI from an advice perspective than I would, right? And I might know how to do certain things around data technology integrations than other people on the way to leverage AI. I think that the person providing the context and being able to ask great questions and being able to provide frameworks and systems to the AI is going to be the skill, as opposed to just, oh, AI is going to be so smart that it's going to know that you're needing context on financial advice and it's just going to broad strokes fix everything.
Right.
And so I think that that is a really, really well-framed thing. And I still agree that even though you're going to be the person prompting it and you're going to be the person, somebody's going to want that human connection, because I just don't think that you're going to want to sit with a chat box open and have that explain to you everything that's going on in your life.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Totally agree. And I mentioned the guilt factor earlier. I'm sure it does or can, but like a robot may not be able to fully understand why an individual feels guilty that they're spending a lot of money when their siblings are struggling. Like some of those connects that I just think will always be missed. Like there's some kind of human connection in there that you can understand the guilt that people sometimes feel with having money and how that plays out. And how do you shape it? How do you help them get past it so that they're okay and understand that this is their goal, this is their path to happiness, this is what they want to do with their wealth? How do we overcome that hurdle in a way that they can feel comfortable, feel okay, sleep good at night, and be happy with what decisions they're making?
This podcast is brought to you by Turncast. We make game-changing content for fintech and financial services companies. Learn more at turncast.com.
Hey, this is Judd Mackerel. Thanks for listening to this show. I just wanted to ask you one question. What's your technology and data strategy for 2025? If you can't clearly answer that question, I'd love to talk. We are spending some specific time with select firms to really go deep and help you clearly answer that question. We believe that it's one of the things that often holds back firms from really achieving their potential, from really achieving growth, and really getting a lot of the things in the position that they need to be. The things that are holding up the way that you scale, like your workflows, how you manage data around your revenue, how you report all of that to your advisors, and getting clarity in all those things. I'm sure there's a lot of very specific things to your business that are really important as well, and we'd love to talk about that. If this is interesting to you, hit me up with an email. My direct email is jud@milemarker.co, and I'd love to hear from you, hear what you're working on, hear what your strategy is, and see if there's an opportunity for us to help you get more clear on that strategy in 2025. Thanks.
What do you think it is that causes a client who's been successful or things like that to really struggle or feel guilty in some of these ways? And I'm just going to take a little bit of a macro perspective, and maybe this will be broad strokes. But when I was younger, so this isn't even that long, it used to be celebrated to be successful. And now I think in some ways it's frowned upon. And I think people really feel like they don't want to be viewed or celebrate being successful anymore. And there is so much guilt around success. And I know people struggle with that in all sorts of ways. Like, why do you think that is? What do you think has happened to do that? And how do you as an advisor help them navigate that?
Yeah, so I think a lot of our financial mindsets that we have come from our childhood. So at young ages, people are impacted in a certain way. A question we've always liked to ask is, what's your first memory of money? When you have someone that comes from a past where maybe their parents struggled, they remember their parents fighting over finance, over money, like money starts to develop more of a negative connotation than a positive connotation. And so when you think about like how that develops over generations, then let's say they become successful, but they're the one that breaks out. They're the one that does it differently. I have heard people say that they almost feel like an imposter living in a different world, that they weren't intended for this. They don't know why they got so lucky. They start to discount all the hard work and all the decisions that they made that were different that led them there. And so to me, it always seems like it ties back to like the childhood and their early thoughts on what money was and how it worked and if it was a good thing or a bad thing. I think when you think about getting past it, I've had people like, how do you get past it? And I'll pause here real quick because I do think we have to be part psychiatrists in this industry. Like you really have to be able to talk about this stuff. But when you think about how do you get past it, you can either worry about what others are going to think, or you can try to find your own happiness. When I think about the goals and why the goals are so important, a lot of times it's about children, grandchildren. That's what they're trying to help. And so is the money going to help you reach the goals and help the people you want to help? Or are you going to not help the people you want to help so that you don't offend the people maybe from the past, or that may not even exist and they exist in your mind that people are thinking this or looking away? So I think if you can help lead them to that conversation of all the good things, like this is the goals, this is what you said is important, this is what you want to accomplish, you can do that. You need to get out of your own way here. If you want to help your children, your grandchildren, you want to build a house that's large enough for your family to come back at the holidays so that you can have your children and grandchildren all in one place, you can do that financially. But you got to get rid of this baggage that's telling you that that's not okay, that you don't deserve this, that you didn't earn this. You did, and you do. And so it's really about focusing on what's important, I think, to get them past some of that. But it always seems to be rooted back to their younger years.
So good, man. That's the value of an advisor right there. I think that's awesome. Because so many of us do care way too much about what people who shouldn't get an opinion think about us in many ways. And what's that phrase? Like, if you try and make everybody happy, you won't make anybody happy.
That's right.
Yeah. So that's really, really well stated. All right. You started to segue into it. This is a good opportunity to talk about. Let's talk about how RWA is using technology to fuel the growth of everything that's going on with you. So you guys are growing quickly. I'd actually like to frame this question in a specific way, though, which is you have these two sides of the business. You've got the family office side, and then you've got the wealth side. Are you using the same technology? Is technology being used differently? Like, talk to me about that as you run a business with sort of two engines.
We are using the same technology. So we have the same platform essentially across the whole firm. And so we use all the same technology partners.
What are some of those pieces of technology that are helping you guys be successful?
Yeah. So when we think about our tech stack, we use Salesforce, we use Orion, eMoney, and then I'll say we're custodial agnostic. We have a few different custodians that we leverage. And so as they integrate together, like when I think about why it's important to have one platform, I guess as our firm, and why we think we need to have that, you need to have efficiency in the operations of the business. First of all, we are looking to aggregate and grow and bring on new firms. So you need something that works well. I helped build some platforms in prior lives as well. And when I think about at the end product, the advice I always gave to them is you can give the best client experience in the world, but if it's impossible for the advisors to get it to them, it's never going to work. And so you need to make sure that it flows through the process so that it gets adoption so that we can use it with the clients. So I think having that efficiency is really important. So a lot of what we're trying to do is just give our advisors a platform that they can leverage in order to deliver the best client service. Now, I'll say one software that we've started using in the past maybe 12, 18 months, which I think has really elevated our game, I'll call out, is Holistiplan. I'm sure you're probably familiar with it, but when we talk about the tax planning piece, like that's one that we've rolled out to all of our advisors so that they have the ability to upload, if you're not familiar, upload tax returns into it, and then it will spit out kind of the results and also gives you some thoughts and advice on it. So it's kind of like an integrated AI to some extent, where it will say, hey, here's some things that you might want to think about for this person. And what I love about it is it gives us that first step. And such a great example of what we're talking about is how do you use this integrated technology to raise the game of the human advisor? And so may or may not have thought about it, but I can tell you this, it gets to the facts a lot quicker than we would have if we went through page by page all of their tax returns. And it also, I think, is a great education piece for advisors. They start to see these things pop up. You may see something on there that wouldn't have thought of just by looking through it yourself. And so the advisors, I think, are getting better through this technology. And I think as the technology continues to improve, you'll see more and more of that. But I thought, a great example of a technology that we have implemented recently that I think has really helped up our game.
Yeah, that's a great answer. And it's amazing, right? Because there is opportunities, especially if you're planning focused, and all of these other areas that have historically been silos that people are trying to pull out of the silo into the workflow. I really, really liked your comment about you can create the greatest client experience in the world, but if it's impossible for your advisor to deliver it, then it doesn't matter. And I think there's a lot of people actually doing exactly that. They are creating this incredibly optimized experience, but then they ask advisors to go into places where the technology has 10,000 features, and it's like you just get frustrated and you don't adopt it. So having an adoptable client and advisor experience is incredibly important.
Yeah, just as a mindset, like this may or may not connect to people, but as a mindset, like when you're thinking about technology department, if you're working with a tech partner even, they should really be thinking about their end client as the advisor if they're creating this. And then the advisor needs to think about our client is the actual client. So how will we and can we deliver this? So if as you're building or integrating or trying to create a software for your firm to use, you got to make that first mile first. Is this going to be good for the internal employee experience, for the advisor experience? Is the company going to be more efficient and better for it? And if that checks the box, yes, you're on the right path. And then you find out, okay, is this going to allow us to deliver a better client experience? And I do think people skip over that first step and they create something that they think is going to be great. And then as soon as they put it out there, people revolt.
Yeah, that's so true. We could talk about that probably for another hour of how hard it is to develop things that are adoptable because so many people build for the wrong reasons. And I think that's great. I do think I'm just going to reemphasize, because we see this all the time, that firms like RWA or others, we always call them their B2B to C businesses, right? Like RWA is a platform, your client is the advisor, right? And then your client's client is the investor. You have to be mindful of their client because you're providing an experience to make sure that they can serve them well. But so many firms, it's like the advisor is your client and you need to make sure you're developing a product for them that is one that they want to adopt and they want to take care of. So yeah. I think that's great. All right. On the technology side, you've talked a little bit about this, but I love to ask my guests to kind of get out their crystal ball, look at some of the big macro trends that they see happening in the industry. And where you sit right now, Steve, how are you positioning RWA for a couple of years down the road in the future? What are you looking at?
Yeah, I think I'll start by answering what won't change. Okay. The relationship's always going to matter. I think you start with that and say, how do we continue to deliver on a relationship-based service here? And so I think you start with trying to make sure that you still have the leading edge technologies. AI is clearly going to be an impact. I think AI will help us as we continue to grow. That's going to have to continue to change for each firm and how they leverage it. I think you will probably have to, which the trend has been, work with more and more clients as we move forward. And so there's, in my opinion, no way to accomplish that without better efficiencies, better technology. As people get more comfortable with having their meetings recorded and then those notes get dictated and immediately summarized, like the amount of time and savings that will cause in this industry will be amazing. As an advisor or just as a client-facing employee, you're going to have to continue to increase the percentage of your time that you're sitting with clients. And I think that technology will allow that to continue to increase. And so at the end of the day, for me, I think the future looks really bright because I think most advisors, the thing they enjoy most is meeting with clients. And I think the technology will continue to chase that and to help them accomplish that more and more.
What do you think are some, like, I know you're hitting on this. I want to go a little bit layer deeper. So when we talk about, we've got great technology like Orion and Salesforce and eMoney and all of these things. What is the roadblock to that future you just described? Like an advisor being able to really just spend a lot of time with prospects and with clients and things like that. And they just sort of have this integrated experience where it's like, I've got what I need to be able to just sit with them and I don't have to do a bunch of digging or things like that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if APIs is the right fit or not, but it's, having all those technologies really truly talk together to populate it. I won't call out any partners or anything, but some technologies are much more open to the connectivity or not. I once had an IT person say to me, which is smart and accurate and true, which is we're trying to get access to information they're trying to protect. That at the heart of it causes a lot of issues when you're trying to create like this one platform. And I feel like it's a little bit of the holy grail, and I'll save this for another day, but I've kind of been on that journey a little bit in my career of how do we create a platform that has access to all that information and put it in one space so an advisor can see it, a client can see it, easily shareable. And it just is always changing. Security is always changing. And again, they're trying to protect this information and we're trying to see it. So I think it's that connectivity that's really difficult and tough. So the more of that you can bring in-house and own, and even if it's, I'll say, a manual process, such as collecting it in a client meeting, but if you can have that collected via an AI dictation, and then it automatically updates and inputs, ChatGPT will say on there like updated profile. If we can get it to update in real time and go right in there, if I can be on eMoney and literally talk to someone about, hey, in your Roth IRA, is this still accurate? Is this the dollar amount? 401k, which we can't see or for whatever reason can't pull in, how much is in it? Like if you could collect all of that in real time, it would save a lot of running around on the backside. I just think there's still, and there probably always will be, that buffer where it's financial information. It's very secure. We're going to try to protect it, but how do we protect it and share it at the same time?
Yeah, that's so good. I think one of the questions I love to ask people that pertains to this is, you're a planning focused firm, right? So would your preference be that your advisors are living in eMoney, or should they be in Salesforce, or should they be in Orion, or should they be in Holistiplan? Or like, where would you say like, okay, if I could have the one place that everything was integrated into and all of that, or is it the RWA app, right? That is leveraging all of this stuff. So if you could like wave a magic wand and say, this is the platform where everybody lives, that would be my preference.
My magic wand would be a white labeled platform that all the information comes together. And so I would want it to all say RWA. And as I mentioned, as an advisor, like I caution you to like, as you're using tools, to position them as more than tools. You don't want to position them as the value add. And even as partners, like I won't name any of them in particular, but like, I don't want the client to see like that particular software as the value add. I want them to see me and my advisors as the value add. So if you could have it all together in one spot and something that was branded with all your information, and you are seen as the one that's pointed together, you are the sorcerer there that's got it all brought together and showcased to them. That is ideal, so that people see you and your firm as the one they can't live without. If you showcase a certain technology too much and you highlight, this is great, this is great, this is great, and the next advisor that they run into and talk to says, I have that too. It's not going to be as sticky of a relationship as if it's you and your firm as the one that's the value add.
Yeah, well said, man. What a great place to put a fine point on that. All right, I want to move into the final segment of the show. This is what we call the Milemarker Minute. It's a series of lightning round questions aimed to be a little bit more lighthearted, learn more about Steve outside of RWA and the wealth management industry. So are you ready for the Milemarker Minute?
I'm ready.
All right, let's do it. If you could travel anywhere in the world that you've never been to before, where would you go?
Spain.
Ooh, any particular spot in Spain or just anywhere over there?
There's a number of cities I'd like to see over there, live up the culture. I heard a lot about these discotecas over there, and I just think the culture is great. I've been to Italy over that direction and just absolutely fell in love with it. I've just heard Spain is like the next one that I really need to hit. So I love the culture. I'd love to see the culture over there.
Excellent. I love it. All right. What is the best book or podcast that you have listened to or read in the past year?
The podcast I'm hot on right now is the All In podcast. I think they're, a number of really smart individuals. It's probably ramped up the political aspect of it, but I love their perspective on things. We talk about technology today, their perspective on technology. A lot of them really have technology backgrounds as well. I've gotten a lot of good insight into what's kind of really happening in some of this. They give some insight on companies. They did one kind of a deep dive on the breakup of Google and why that would or wouldn't make sense. A lot of really smart topics. They're smart people, but it has tilted a little more political lately, but it's the number one that I've been listening to over the last year.
I love it. What is the best flavor of ice cream?
Ooh, mint chocolate chip, hands down.
Great answer. Are you a mountains person or a beach person?
Beach, totally. I at some point, I see myself living by the water. I love it down there. Very peaceful. Like to do a lot of deep thinking by the beach.
All right. There's an alternate universe that exists. And the one that we're in right now, Steve is the head of wealth at RWA. You're in financial services. But in this alternate universe, you have to have a different career. What career does Steve have in the alternate universe?
Country music singer.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Okay, I got to ask you, favorite country music artist?
Oh, man. Probably more right now, Morgan Wallen's crushing it on the music side for sure. Garth Brooks made me fall in love with country back in the day. I've had a man crush on Blake Shelton for a long time. But right now, Morgan's turning out a ton of hits right now. So I'd have to go with him.
Excellent. All right. That is the end of the Milemarker Minute. It's also why I love to do it, because you wouldn't find out about the leader of wealth management at an $18 billion firm's man crushes if we didn't do the Milemarker Minute. So Steve, thanks so much for sharing that. What a fun conversation today.
Yeah, thanks for having me today. I appreciate it. I really enjoyed it.
Of course, man. All right, everybody, that has been another episode of Next Mile. Please make sure you click follow or subscribe wherever you are listening to this or watching it. And if you'd be so kind, leave us a review so that people who haven't found the show yet, they can find great conversations like the one I just had with Steve. And be sure to go check out RWA. They're doing some really, really interesting stuff, as you heard Steve lay out here. And they may be your next home, whether you're a client or an advisor. But until the next one, enjoy every mile.